Hello everyone, hope you had a good holiday season. Jumping back into this is the aim of today's session, is getting this hotbar across the bottom that we can scroll through. So let's jump this one down here out of the way. And we'll jump into our project, and we're going to go add in our blueprints folder a new folder for our UI elements. Now, in order to actually get the hotbar on screen, first we need something to put it into. So we need a base widget that will hold all of our characters' information. So we'll right click under user interface, we can create widget blueprint, user widget, and this will be UI underscore player HUD. This is the main window that'll have like health bar, stamina bar, the hotbar at the bottom, inventory windows will go into, etc., etc. So we'll double click and open that up. And it's opening up on my other screen. So inside here, this is what you'll see. It has basically nothing in it so far. This is your canvas. And over here is the hierarchy of things you have in your canvas. It used to come with a canvas panel automatically. It does not anymore. So we'll go add one. Just drag it and drop it out. You can drag it, drop it here, whichever you like. And then I'm going to right click it and wrap it with a scale box. And then wrap it one more time with a size box. Width and height override 1920 by 1080, or whatever your aspect ratio is right here. Basically you want it to just the green line to go around all your dotted line. That way no matter what monitor this goes on, it'll scale it according to this. So it'll look weird on like a 4:3, but if it's, you know, 16 by whatever this aspect ratio is, what is it, 16 by 9? Yeah, it'll look fine. It'll scale it to fit it nicely. Alright, so at the very bottom, we are going to add a border. So border is very handy because it can help you define the shape of your UI element in a main, like in this kind of place, and then it can take in a full child unit. So if you have another widget you've made, it can go into here. So I'm going to anchor it with this. I'm going to anchor it to the bottom. Alignment. Couldn't find it. Alright, alignment on the X 0.5 so that it's right in the middle. Position X, position Y, reset back to 0, alignment Y 1 so it sits on top. Then position Y -50 so that it moves it up a little bit. Now the size of the hotbar is determined by the size of the buttons that we are going to have inside of it. I personally like the way that the buttons look when they're a 75 by 75 square, but I also want to have just a little bit of space around it on each side. So for the size Y, I'm going to set it to be 85 so that it's got about 5 units above it, 5 units below it, because that'll also allow it to have the outline encased nicely. And then for the size X, I'm going to set it to 850 because I want to have 10 buttons at 75 apiece. This gives about, 10 units each side. So 5 on each side of it, spaced out. Basically, you just want to add it up and kind of figure it out. I'll show you an easier way to do that instead of just trying to guesstimate it from the very beginning, but I've already done that, so I was just giving you the numbers that I came up with. Now, the white background is the brush. The content color and opacity will not change that. I thought it would. Okay. Well, that's not the one you want to adjust anyway, so you want to leave this one exactly like that. The brush is that white background. If you adjust the content color, then anything you put inside of this, any child widget element, it'll be affected by this. but the brush color is that actual image. So if you have an image, you can put it in the background. You ain't gonna be able to tell. Oh, and I'm just using a gray, so that's, yeah, we'll just leave it like that. So I'm going to set this to black, 0.75 to make it a little bit see-through, and then that's that. Then I'm going to name it. This is going to be my hotbar container. And it is a variable because we're going to be doing some stuff with it when we add the buttons. Yeah, it should be a variable. Then we're going to add a uniform grid panel inside of it. This is going to be the actual hotbar panel. Is a variable. Do you need to be a variable? We'll figure it out. We'll come back. First, let's go set up our actual button. So right click, user interface. We'll set up another widget of a user. UI underscore inventory icons. Now we're going to use the same ones for our inventory menu as the hotbar. So we're going to add some selectable functionality, make it determine if we click it what it is, because it'll just make it easier in the long run. So, but we do need to adjust inside our player blueprint. Let's go to our inventory, and we're going to set the inventory size to about 15. That way it gives us 10 hotbar slots plus 5 backpack slots. So we can go into our inventory icons. I could change that to just icon. And in here, we're going to add another canvas panel. Now this is way too big for an inventory icon. So up here in the top right where we got fill screen, we can set it to custom on screen or desired on screen. I like custom on screen. And then we can do a width and height of 75 by 75. And then there's our button. Now we are going to also wrap this with a scale box and a size box. Might be overkill because it's going to go into one that already has it, but it's just good practice to go ahead and remember scale size. And it doesn't hurt it, as far as I'm aware, at least. And the width and height is 75 on each. So now that we got that, we're going to add our button. Anchor it to the full thing, reset the offsets, there's that. And that's our actual item button. The reason we needed to use a canvas panel instead of just dragging out a button is because I'm also going to drag out an image, but I don't want it to be stuck to the button. So I'm going to set it on the canvas panel itself. Anchor it also to the full thing, but its offset is actually going to be -3 on each side. This way it has just a little bit of, it's just a little bit outside of it. Now if we highlight the button and go to its Z order, we can set that to 1 and that'll bring it forward. This is basically, if you consider 0 to be like a tabletop and you're just stacking papers down on top of each other, the Z order is their order in the stack. So 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., if that makes sense. So let's set the color of this image, because this is going to be our highlight. So let's just change that name real quick to highlight. Yeah, just highlight, I guess that works. And we'll change the color of that to 0 on the blue, 0.5 on the green, and give it this kind of nice golden, this golden hue. Now I don't like the jagged edges of it. What we can do is under the brush, we can draw as a rounded box and it becomes a circle. We don't want a circle. If we hit the outline settings, we can go down to the rounding type and we can change it to a fixed radius. Then it loses all of that and goes back to a square, which we don't want. But right here we have the corner radii. I think I'm saying that right. We can adjust each corner's individual settings. So let's say, now see how that's rounded up? You can play with the values to figure out ones that you like. I like the way the 6 kind of looks because it kind of matches up a little bit with this and looks kind of nice, in my opinion. Whatever works for you, works for you. That's just the one I'm going to go with. Now, one thing we do want to do, Oreo, madam, I am recording. Thank you. I love you. We want to set it that it is hidden to begin with, because every icon is not going to be, we don't want all our icons to have this around it, just the one that we are going to be currently kind of looking at or highlighting. Now inside the graph side of things, we are going to add, well, let's rename that button real quick. So the button is item icon, item button, whatever you want to call it. It just looks better if it's named rather than button 0. We'll get rid of these two. And the pre-construct, we will add item info variable. That will be our item info struct. Make sure it's instance editable, expose on spawn. And then when we construct this, we will drag out our item info. Drag out our item button. Would make more sense for this to be item button instead of item icon. And we're going to set the style. I remember when I first got into UI stuff that it was it seemed very intimidating, but really all you're doing in here is your main keyword is make. So if you drag off and you just type make, there's your make. And again, make and make and make. So basically you'll find what you need to just with that one word. So in style, we're going to make a button style. On the normal, we are going to make slate brush. And we're going to hook this into the normal impressed. And basically what this will do is it'll change the look of our button based on its current activity, like whether it's just sitting there normal, whether we pressed it, hovered over it, whether it's disabled, etc., etc. That is what it'll do. So now for our slate brush, this will basically be the image of the button. I want it to be drawn as a rounded box because I want it to maintain this nice little rounded edge right here. So from our item info, we can break that open because we are going to need access to our item image that can go right there in the bottom. Now to make sure that our rounded box actually stays as the rounded box, we need to get the outline settings. And again, we can just make slate brush outline settings. Now we'll match it up to be what it is over here. So let's go to our button. It's style, normal, outline settings. So its corner radius is 4 on each one, and it has an outline of 1. Let's grab this outline color. If you drag a color right here, you can save it. So instead of having to remember 0.695111, you can just drag it up and be like, that one. Because I like that color of that outline. So we will make a vector 4, and this is for our item button, so it's 4 across the board, not 40. Get out of there. The slate color, we will make the slate color for the outline. And we can just click the specified color and then click that. Now the width is just a 1 and the rounding type is a fixed radius. So let's copy this and paste it right below it, because we want to do basically the same thing if it's hovered, except for one thing. We want to add a little bit of a tint right here. So we'll hook our item image to the image, outline settings to the outline settings, and then from tint on the one that's connected to hovered, we can make slate color again. And we will just bump this all the way up to 1. and set it to like 0.1 or 0.05, basically a darker color. And it seems complicated, but it's really not once you kind of break it down into its different things. You're just making the style of the slate brush, which is just your image. You make your outline settings, you make your vector 4s, etc. So let's go back into our player HUD, because this should now be a black button. Yeah, since we're doing it on the pre-construct, it'll actually affect it in real time, and we can actually see it. So like if I disconnect this and go back, then it's a white button. But if I connect this and then compile it, then it'll be a black button because of the item info default that we set. So it'll pull my default image from here and actually display it in real time right here, which is handy. Which also helps us when we go into our hotbar. We can actually grab our inventory icons, place it in. I'm going to right click and duplicate it, and let's see, I want to have 10 slots. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it looks a little funny right now because it's up there, but if we click our hotbar panel, then we can set our vertical alignment. We want the horizontal alignment to fill the whole thing, but the vertical alignment can be in the center. So that'll drop it down a little bit. Then we want to add some slot padding. Minimum slot width 75 by 75, and the slot padding 5 on each side. And that'll kind of line it up nicely in the middle. Now you don't have to actually have to put each one in order to be able to visualize. You can just kind of count it out and make sure that this last one is in column 9, because the columns and rows are like arrays, so it'll start at 0. So we could delete the, it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and delete it for now. So over in our player HUD widget graph side, get rid of that, and we're going to do a pre-construct. We're going to actually build those hotbars and set them into the hotbar panel. So on construct, we are going to do a for loop, not a for each loop, because we want to make sure that this always has the same amount of numbers. And we are going to set the last index to be 9, just like our button was in the array. And for each item of this loop, we want to create widget. The widget that we want to create is our inventory icons. And if you remember, that takes in an item info that we exposed. So in order to get that, we will grab our character's inventory. We'll make that an item info. Item info struct. Set it to be an array variable type, instance editable, and expose on spawn. So now we can drag this out. Once we create this from the player, we'll actually feed this in. And every time we create this widget, we want to get a copy of the item info at that same slot number. Because the way our inventory is going to work is it's just basically our hotbar is the first 10 items of our inventory. So whatever's in those slots in your menu, well, it did not sound like I said slots. Whatever's in those slots in your menu is what'll be in your hotbar. I'm going to work on enunciating. I don't need to get demonetized, I'm already poor. Alright, so every time we loop through, we're getting the index that we're on. We're getting the inventory slot at that number. We're creating an icon widget. We are going to add this to an array. We're going to we'll promote this to a variable. This will be our hotbar icons. And this will come in handy later on when we're scrolling through our bar, or when we're actually using items, we'll be able to just pull the actual. So like if I just grab one of these and get the item info, see, you can actually pull all of that info from each button, so we'll know what the item is, the image, the use animation. We'll be able to pull all that directly from the button itself, so that when we highlight it and click it, we'll be able to just do it. So we add that to an array, and then we will add, let's grab our hotbar panel. We're going to add child to uniform grid. The content is the button we just created. And the column, and it's the left and right, so it should be, I don't have a column item here, but row is up and down and column is left and right. So we will just feed this new index into column, and then every time it loops through, it'll set that up. If we compile this, we should be able to see, yeah, there's our buttons. Since we're doing it on the pre-construct, we can kind of see it as it goes. So we create the items and add it to the uniform grid. And then we can, once it's completed, we will set our very first one to be highlighted. Now you may notice they all seem to be highlighted. Oh, it did it twice. That seems odd. Every time I go back it does it. Alright. Well then, let's just do a little bit of a preemptive cleanup thing. Once it constructs, we will just go ahead and grab our hotbar panel and clear children. And hotbar icons, and we'll clear that as well. Just to make sure every time it fires through this event, it'll first get rid of anything it does have and then redo it. In the game it'll only do it once, but it can get kinda, yeah, there it goes. It'll get confusing if we hop back and forth and it keeps doing that, and then we gotta recompile every time. It's a headache. So let's go to our inventory icons, and we need to set up a function to get rid of or activate that highlight. So we'll create two custom events, activate highlight, and then one more custom event, deactivate highlight. And all this is going to do is our highlight. We'll drag it out, and we're going to set visibility. When we activate it, we want it visible. When we deactivate it, we want it hidden. Just like that. And then on the pre-construct, we'll just go ahead and call that deactivate highlight. So now when we go into our player HUD over here, it's just black buttons. But after we go through and create all these, since it's on the pre-construct that it's deactivating, after it's constructed, we can go to our hotbar, get a copy of the very first index, which is 0 because it's an array, and call that activate highlight. And since it's on the pre-construct, ba-bam, number 1 is highlighted. So now we can actually put this on screen. If we go to our event graph, we're going to need to start cleaning some of this up. This is our begin play, so let's just, I'm going to delete the comment box around it, grab the whole thing, move it over to the side, not too far, golly. And at the very end, when we update the grid checker, we can create widget. It will be our player HUD, and it's taking in an inventory, so we'll grab our inventory component, get our inventory, and just feed it in like that. Now from here, we're going to right click, promote to variable. This will be our player HUD reference, or just player HUD. Then we will add to viewport. This way we can actually see it on screen. this will allow us to pull our hotbar. So like if I drag off here, I can get all my hotbars right there inside my player blueprint. So if we jump into the game, we should see, hey, look at you. But now we need to actually be able to scroll through it. So I'm going to do this right next to where we're creating it. I'm just going to right click and create, let's see, a mouse wheel up and a mouse wheel down. We'll go back and add all the enhanced inputs later on. I usually just do this for debugging, and then as it gets closer and closer to release, I'll go back and reformat all the inputs. So for mouse wheel up, we basically want to find out whatever button we're at and then scroll up. So we'll grab our player HUD. We're going to create one more integer variable that is hotbar selected. It should start at 0 so that it matches up with our first one being, yeah. And then hotbar selected. When we scroll up, we're going to add 1 to it. Now one way of doing this might be to clamp where it can't scroll past this one, because then it has nothing else to pull from. But I kind of want it to loop through, so once you get to here and you scroll up, it just starts over. Clamping would make it to where we can't do that. So what we're going to do is we are going to see if this number plus 1 is greater than 9. Because if it's greater than 9, that means it's 10, it means it's over our hotbar. So then we'll do a set hotbar selected. And from here we can do a select int. And if we plug this into our Boolean selector, if it's greater than 9, that means we want to go back to the beginning of the bar. Since it's an array, it starts at 0. We just set it to 0. If it's not, then we can set it to our new plus value. So it'd be like 0 plus 1, is that greater than 9? No, it's 1. So okay, then pick 1. Or 3 plus 1 is 4, blah blah blah, you get it. So then we can it's hotbar icons. Because whenever we're scrolling up, we want to deactivate the last one and then activate the new one. So we'll get a copy of the item. Before we set the new number, we can use this number. If you don't want it to look like that, we can just do it like this, and we can deactivate the highlight of it. Then we set the new number, and we can basically copy this and put it over here, and then we can activate the highlight on the new one. So to demonstrate, now we can scroll through. We can only scroll up though. Down does nothing yet. So we'll do the same thing essentially for the down. Now you could just copy and paste this and put this to be -1. I'm going to go ahead and just rebuild it just for putting in those muscle memory reps. Plus there's a little bit of a change you got to do here. Not much, I'm sure you can figure it out. But I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to get my hotbar selected. Instead of doing a plus -1, I'm just going to do that's the wrong. I'm going to do a -1 or plus -1, whatever. And then we're going to see if this is less than 0. So if I'm subtracting from it, if it's 0 minus 1, it'd be -1. Nope, that's less than 0. We want to select a different number. So we're going to set our hotbar. We'll do a select int. Is it less than 0? Yes. And in that case, put 9. 9, just 9, not 90. If it's not, we plug in our number there. And just like up top, we'll grab our player HUD, get our hotbar icons, get a copy of the one at the current selection, deactivate its highlight, and then afterwards we can copy, paste, and activate highlight. So let's grab all that, kind of move it down, comment it out, and this will be hotbar selection. Ah, no. Alright. Set that up a little ways, or just wherever you feel like it's out of the way. And then when we jump in, we can scroll up, we can scroll down, we get to the back, we get to the very first item, it goes to the last of the bar. Yeah. So now we can start actually feeding in the information from here to our buttons and then refreshing it and all that jazz. So we'll start doing that in the next one. I will see y'all there. Bye bye.